So glad that you're joining us from all around the world. We love connecting with you, and really the heart of this show is to communicate to you around the world topics that include the end times, the one new man. We want to really bring you into what is happening here on the ground in Israel. We want to connect you with different leaders, people who are bearing kingdom fruit, both here in Israel and around the nations. We want to share powerful testimonies with you. And there's so much more that's in our hearts. And so we're just so glad that you've been joining us every week here at Revive Live. And today is going to be another amazing episode. My guest today, her name is Greta. She is this passionate, on-fire lover of Yeshua. I've been able to watch her life the last few years and just see this lay-down lover. She's just laying her life down literally to serve not only the Jewish people, but also Greece, the Greek people. And we're going to dig into some of that stuff. There's going to be some new revelation, new things that you are going to hear today that you haven't heard before. And also one thing that I love about my guest, Greta, today, is that she is so unique in that she knows and is fluent in Hebrew, English, and Greek. I don't know a single other person. I know there's got to be a handful of people. But Greta, you are one of the few like that. And so I'm just so glad that you're here with me today. Thank you for taking time.
Thank you.
That's great. Well, let's jump right in. We have lots that we want to chat about today.
Okay.
Obviously we're going to talk today about this Greek-Israel connection, following in the footsteps of Paul again. There's a whole bunch of new things that are being dug up like we see in the book of Acts, which really, when I think about you, I think that the primary connection that we could really agree on is that we see the book of Acts not as something 2,000 years ago as a historical book, but we see this as like almost a prophetic thing that's coming alive again in our day, and we're in agreement on that, and it's exciting. And so we're going to unpack some of that today. But let's go back a little bit further. Who are you? You know, where are you from? Where do all these connections and languages and things come from?
Well, I grew up in New York and from a Greek background, but I grew up in a Jewish community in New York, and I know that was God's doing because of the purpose and plan that He had for my life. So I always had this, the Greek background, but the Jewish upbringing and schools and...
The Greek background is because of your parents?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Both your parents are from Greece?
Yeah. My mother's American born, but she's second generation,
Wow.
and my father was born actually in Cyprus. And, you know, I always wondered just what this was all about. You know, how does this work together? And then I had an experience in 1982. I was traveling like a lot of young people at a very young age, teen, and I had a powerful experience, an encounter with Yeshua in Greece. In my travels. And at the same time, I had gone to Israel, I had gone to Turkey, I had gone to Cyprus. I was searching. And I was searching in the Bible lands, which was very interesting. It was almost like the Lord was leading this whole thing. And in 1982, I had an encounter in my room, and eternity was opened up to me. Hell and heaven and His glory. And I knew in a moment of time that this was something for that region as well, that the God that was being revealed to me in my room in powerful glory, I mean, I was taken up into the heavens, was connected to this region. And somehow I knew in my spirit, I didn't have the understanding at the time because I hadn't even read the Bible, but I knew that these lands were very, very important and that somehow they were supposed to come together again.
Wow. All through that one encounter.
Through that one encounter.
Amazing.
Yeah. I knew that this was bigger than me, that this, you know, little me, this was not just for me, this was for something much bigger. And it turned out that after many, many years, well, not so many, actually in 1988 approximately, I went to Times Square Church, which was a church raised up by David Wilkerson. I actually worked for Teen Challenge as an evangelist, and while he was raising up the church, God was giving him a profound revelation of the importance of putting Israel first, the Israel mandate, and communion.
Wow.
And one day during communion, and this was the turning point where I began to just move into this Jewish reality. During the communion service, I had an open eye experience again of Yeshua.
Wow.
And I saw a man walk across the sanctuary, and he was dressed in a robe. And I heard the voice of the Holy Spirit, and he said, "This is Jesus, the Jewish high priest." And the emphasis was on Jewish. And suddenly, I was seeing the high priest, who was a Jewish man, who had gone into the Holy of Holies, not just for the Jews, but also for the Gentiles.
Wow.
And it was a turning point in my heart, in my soul. I realized that a Jewish man died for the Gentiles as well as the Jews, and how wicked the spirit of anti-Semitism was, and it was such an ungrateful spirit after what he had done, given his life.
Wow.
And it was, for me, it was, something was imparted into my soul that stays with me to this day.
Wow. Did you feel a little bit alone in kind of receiving these revelations? You know, when you share maybe with your family, friends, were people catching it as well, or what was that like for you?
I didn't share it immediately. Maybe with some close friends who were on the same journey.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was really powerful, and what it did was it made me want to, tell the Gentiles, the nations, that he's your God too. And he's Jewish. And it confirmed the genealogy. And I think what God did pretty soon after that was he brought me to 1 John chapter 4, which says, "This is how we know the spirit of truth from the spirit of error." Every spirit that says Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, came in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that denies that is of the Antichrist. And I saw that the Jewish witness was so important. I understood the Holocaust. I understood why there was such a quest to kill every physical Jew. Because it was the witness, the plumb line of truth, and particularly in the last days when the Antichrist is going to manifest so powerfully. And it was almost like a burden was put inside of me.
Wow. So, go ahead.
No, I felt so comfortable with him as a Jew.
Wow.
I felt like he was mine, as he's the Jewish God, but he became mine personally for what he did for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is what Gentiles need to feel in this day of us becoming one new man, that this Jewish God is, like for Ruth, he's their Boaz too, their kinsman redeemer, and it's that close.
Wow.
He's not a foreign God.
Yeah.
He's both of our God.
Yeah.
And I connected with him as a human. He was a human man. He was a Jewish perfect man. And I think that was just a turning point for me.
That's amazing.
He's also God, but he's a Jewish man.
So now let's move to Israel for a second, because you actually had the heart to come here. You invested much time learning the language,
did.
like I have. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was serving in a prayer ministry in New York, and this burden was very strong. We also had a very strong Israel prayer meeting once a week at Times Square Church that I was a part of, and a Jewish ministry that I was a part of. And I was in a prayer watch somewhere else in the city, and I was actually listening to some Jewish messianic music about his glory, and Karen Davis was actually singing, and she was a friend from Times Square Church. And suddenly, he came in the room again. And he spoke to me. and he said, "You've always loved my Jewishness, and I'm sending you to Israel."
Wow.
And again, it was this connection that he took flesh and blood because we were flesh and blood. And that we could connect with him that way. You know, there's a lot of teachings in the body about, you know, we become like God and all this. But I saw the opposite, that the whole Jewish Hebraic thing is to become human.
Wow.
Is to become human. That's all God ever wanted from us, was to become like his humanity.
Wow.
And, you know, Satan wanted to be God, and that's what caused him to be thrown out. But the Son of God wanted to be a man, and that's what gave us the victory.
Wow.
It was powerful.
So it almost sounds like you're coming to Israel, investing into the language, reaching out to Israelis. A lot of the things that you've been doing over the last many years is primarily just to connect with him, this Jewish Messiah, this Jewish God.
Absolutely. And I would encourage, you know, every Gentile to open up to that. That we come for him. We come to the land for him.
Yeah.
The God of Israel. And if you come for Israel, it could get unbalanced or empty. Just a shell, another religion, another religious experience. But the point is to connect with the God of Israel, with Yeshua. And that's what brings you to the Father.
That's good. So now let's talk about Greece a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I know you have received some very deep insights into this connection. Let's talk about that a little bit. Where does that start? When did you start getting more insight and connection to, obviously your parents are from there, you've been to Greece, but there's this biblical end time thing that you seek in this connection. Tell us about that.
Well, as I said, it was part of my journey. I was looking for my heart. Greeks are known, and I was kind of intellectual, Greeks are known as kind of stuck in the head. Or you know, the Bible talks about the Greeks seeking for wisdom, and it's actually foolishness to God. I was looking for my heart. I was looking for an experience of love and truth out of the heart, and I didn't quite understand it. But that was my journey, and I think one of the big things that happened was that he took me to Genesis 9 and 10. I was looking to figure out the destiny of Greece, why it went kind of astray into, you know, this whole Hellenistic mindset. And suddenly God turns me to the verses about Shem and Japheth, two of the sons of Noah.
Which is Japheth, I think, in English.
Japheth in Hebrew and Japheth in English.
Yes.
And I see that he blesses Shem, which is the line, the genealogy of Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov, and finally Yeshua, and how that line was the blessed line. But then Noah turns in the spirit, and he blesses Japhet in Hebrew, and he says, "You will dwell in the tents of Shem." And I look up the genealogy, and it says Yavan is the son of Japhet, which in Hebrew means Greece.
Yeah.
And then it talks about Kittim being part of that line too, which is Cyprus.
Yes.
And so suddenly it's like the light went off, and I said, oh my goodness, Greece has a destiny to come into the tents of Shem. And this is Ephesians 2, 3, 4. This is the one new man.
Yeah. Wow.
This is why God prepared the Greek nation with the language to be used to spread the gospel, and the new covenant cities are in Greece. And then I suddenly saw the Apostle Paul had that vision to go to Macedonia. But it wasn't just a spontaneous thing. That God had predestined this thing. He had prophesied it.
Yes.
He had sent Paul to fulfill those blessings It was fantastic.
Wow.
And then I read that the rabbis also, they say that one of the giftings of Greece, the Greek people, is the language. That Greek is the only language that could translate accurately and eloquently the Jewish writings, the Jewish revelation of God.
Wow.
So there you go. And then you see to the Jew first, to the Greek, and where there's no Jew, there is no Greek, but the Messiah is all in all. And I began to see that our union together is from God, to kind of as a restoration of the image of God.
Wow. That's amazing.
That fell apart.
Yes.
In
Wow.
sin.
So let's also talk about like what's actually happening on the ground.
Sure.
As you're living in Greece right now, you've traveled back and forth to Israel frequently, but on the ground, what's happening in Greece?
What's happening in Greece? Well, the interesting thing is that all of these things that God was doing in me from 1982, and I saw the Bible lands come together, suddenly what I had known in my spirit begins to happen politically, militarily. Suddenly, Turkey, which is Greece's enemy, and I believe it was the wedge that was keeping the Greeks and the Jews from uniting, gets out of the picture, you know, in their relationship with Israel, and suddenly the Greeks and the Jews are becoming friends, and they find natural gas in the Mediterranean, in between Cyprus and Israel. And now there's all these agreements being made by Israel, Cyprus, and Greece to come together to build this pipeline that goes from Israel to Cyprus to Greece. What does it sound like? It sounds like
the New Testament.
The Apostle Paul's journeys.
Yes.
And I was just laughing.
Wow.
I thought, you're just so amazing, God.
Yeah. Well, I'm even reminded, I think about a year ago when Israel was having all these wildfires, Greece sent more airplanes to help put out the fires than anyone else.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And they're having military exercises for the first time in history. Israel, Greece, and Cyprus.
Yeah.
And the Lord was just showing me that He wants to take the Mediterranean again. He wants to take this region.
Yeah.
And He wants revival fires to burn again. So we're having prayer meetings. I have a 2-floor ministry apartment, and we have prayer meetings there on this bridge. And we have a monthly prayer meeting with some of the Greek pastors in Thessaloniki and some other interested people. This has never happened before. We have monthly meetings. We'd like more. We'd like more people to join. And we've had 2 conferences in the last couple of years where I've organized leaders. Eitan Shishkov and Dan Juster came, and we did a Jewish-Greek unity conference, and we sang in Hebrew, we sang in Greek.
Wow.
It was fantastic. It was like everything was becoming one book and one revelation, one God, one family.
Wow.
And we want to continue doing that.
Wow, that's beautiful. I'm going to ask you one more question about your favorite Greek word. But before we do that, I just want to encourage you guys, you know, Greta's raising her own support. She's given her life to serve the Greek people, also the Jewish people. She travels frequently and is really just, I see kind of in the spirit, she's just pulling these 2 peoples together. And I don't know a lot of people like her that carry this burden. And I want to just invite, would you pray about partnering with her? You can get in touch with Greta by going to the website tikkun.tv, and on that website has emissaries. You can go through the list of emissaries. Greta's page will be there. You can donate so generously into her ministry. It's really important. This is a real end-time thing that we see of God reconnecting not only the Isaiah 19 highway, of what we've talked about before here, but also this thing with Greece. We believe that this is a strategic end-time thing that God is raising up and doing in our day. And so we want to be praying for Greta. We want to be sowing into her ministry as she continues to reach out to more and more Israelis and Greek believers and non-believers.
Amen.
So let's close with this. Maybe I know it's a difficult question.
Very.
You know Hebrew, you know Greek. Give me a little insight. Give me a nugget on one of your favorite biblical words that you read in English maybe all your life, and then suddenly you get to know the meaning in the original language, and all of a sudden something opens up to you that you hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
Is there something that jumps out to you?
There's a lot, as you said. I mean, Asher connects with me a lot. We talk about this a lot because he's getting involved with it too. He sees it. Yeah. And there's so many words. And the interesting thing is that if you know New Testament Greek, you can really feel the pulse of Hebrew under it. And they work together. Yeah. I'll give you one example. We know savlanut in Hebrew. Which is patience. Which is patience. And in the middle of it is sevel, which is suffering. And the Greek word for patience is hypomone, which means dwelling or remaining under. So if you put the two together, it's you remain under in the suffering. It's a picture of the cross until you're transformed. Wow. And you need both to get the fuller revelation. And there's so much of that going on in the Word of God. Yes. And like I said, I really share a lot with Asher. You know, he picks up these words. He's not even Greek, doesn't speak Greek, but he catches it somehow. Yeah. And we talk about it. Yeah. I've even found when I'm reading the New Testament in Hebrew, and I look up something in Greek, there's such a, like what you're saying, there's a closer connection between the Greek and the Hebrew than there is to the English. Absolutely. Very helpful. I'll give you another one, which is really was life-changing for me. And you've probably all known this. It says, be anxious for nothing. And Matthew 6, don't be anxious for what you're going to wear, what you're going to drink, about tomorrow. And then Martha and Mary, the same thing. Same word in Greek, mimerimnas, it says. You know, don't be anxious. But it's so much more. Anxiety is like the result of this little word, which has a root, mer, in it, which means part. And it's like, this is what we do with our hearts. We can compartmentalize our heart, and then we've already failed in the first commandment, which is to love God with all your heart. And the result of that is anxiety. Yeah, wow. The result of that, it comes from a divided heart. And I was reading the Old Testament this week where Solomon is talking about having a perfect heart, lev shalem, which means whole, but it also means undivided. So again, a whole heart is an undivided heart. And this is again where it all works together. And it so encouraged a friend of mine who's actually working on this Jewish-Greek bridge, that she actually had an experience with the Lord on this revelation. He came into her room and he took out her old heart and he put in a new heart. And it was a whole undivided heart. And her whole life has been transformed. Wow. So it's powerful. Amen. Well, Greta, thank you so much for your time today. Great having you with me and hearing your heart. It's been great. And friends, I want to encourage you, take a second and like and share this broadcast. I bet you have some friends, some family that want to hear about some of these connections between Greek and Israel and a lot of what we've talked about today. So go ahead, share and like this, and we will see you next week on Revive Live. See you soon.